I'm so sad that one Batman villain who is truly perfect for Christian Bale's Batman only appears in the Dark Knight's secret fourth movie. While the Christopher Nolan trilogy highlighted some of the best iterations of Batman villains, one key character only appeared in Batman: Gotham Knight, a special animated anthology film set in the same universe. The film, which was released in 2008, is set between the events of Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. And while it had different writers, directors, and even Kevin Conroy taking over the role of Bruce Wayne, the film is intended as part of that same set of stories, though they feel slightly disconnected. And it's down to this disconnection that I feel a huge sense of disappointment, because it introduced some incredibly exciting characters who got a chance to face off with Batman, despite not making it to the live-action cut. Had these stories been allowed to have more influence or inspired the inclusion of some key villains, we could have gotten some of the most interesting and complex takes on the Batman rogues gallery to date, but it was never meant to be. Deadshot's appearance in The Dark Knight's fourth movie shows how perfect he is for Nolan's DC world. Deadshot had the potential to a great Nolan villain. Batman. Gotham Knight consisted of 6 short stories, each with a unique plot and animation style, that worked together to expand the world of The Dark Knight. And while they had some connecting lines between them, they were less closely tied to the Nolan films, despite intentionally being made as an in-between narrative for the first and second entries. But in the final short sequence of the 6, Deadshot is introduced to Gotham, and I was blown away by how intense and ideal this villain could be in contrast to Christian Bale's Batman. The Dark Knight movie series is fascinating to revisit, especially when it comes to the series' oft-forgotten fourth installment and its story. The Batman scene in the Nolan trilogy is one of the darkest and most visceral versions of the hero scene in films up to that point. While he fought villains with the intention of cleaning up the city of Gotham, he had a dark side and struggled to keep his conscience in line. This was what made villains like Harvey Dent, who progressed from being Gotham's White Knight to becoming Two-Face, such an interesting foil to Batman. And in many ways, Deadshot could have been a similar type of villain who had some connections to Batman and chose a very different path. Why Deadshot only appears in Batman, Gotham Knight. Batman. Gotham Knight opens up the Nolan Batman universe. It's difficult to know exactly why Deadshot didn't make it into the Dark Knight movies, but there are a couple of clear reasons that stand out. Firstly, there are an abundance of villains in Batman stories. In the first movie, mob bosses like Carmine Falcone and Sal Maroni appear, in addition to the Scarecrow and also Ra's al Ghul. The second movie goes on to focus on Batman's most infamous rival, the Joker, as well as more crime bosses and also Two-Face. Then finally, in Batman Begins, the film highlights Bane and Talia al Ghul. Overstuffing the movies would have soured the overall quality, and Nolan needed to include certain heavy hitters. But on top of avoiding oversaturating his movies, Deadshot would have been a difficult villain to include. The thing is, Deadshot's entire existence is as a gun-toting assassin who never misses. And in closer combat he wields wrist-mounted pistols that could really challenge Batman. Across the Nolan movies, the villains that were highlighted got close and personal with Batman, fighting hand-to-hand or playing with his mind. But Deadshot would be more likely to shoot first and ask questions later. However, I think this is exactly what would have made the villain a thoroughly compelling character to include. Batman works hard to avoid breaking his personal code, and Deadshot would have been another villain who pushes him to question his choices. On top of that, he is a more grounded villain to tackle than the super powerful and supernatural characters that often appear in Gotham. This is exactly the kind of character Nolan likes to tackle, as he avoids making things too supernatural and unrealistic in favor of more gritty and grounded characters. The Dark Knight trilogy is one of the most celebrated superhero franchises ever, and even questionable decisions have been vindicated in hindsight. While I think there have been some okay takes on Deadshot and other media, it would have been great to have the visionary director Nolan put his own spin on things. Seeing another rival for Batman who pushes him to question everything, and causing chaos as the bodies start to pile up, it could have been an incredible narrative. And beyond that, it would just be great to have Christopher Nolan tackle another Batman movie, but at least we still have the other incredible entries in T.